Okay, so we've got the fourth category of mediation law, which is rights and obligations. Could you say a bit more about that?
Well, this is the big one. Usually if you have litigation about mediation, which, I don't think happens very often relative to the number of mediations, but it does occur, it usually involves this category. So it's very important. So it's dealing with the rights and obligations of the people in the mediation room, whoever they are.
Mm-hmm.
And here you're dealing, for example, with the obligations of the mediator.
Mm-hmm.
For example, a duty to be impartial, right? A duty to treat the parties fairly, right? Might seem sort of fairly innocuous, but, what does that mean if a mediator, for example, decides to give advice? Right? Does that affect their duty of impartiality or neutrality in any way? And, there's questions and different views about that. Duties of lawyers, right, to advise their clients about the possibility of mediation. So those sorts of obligations exist in some jurisdictions prior to going to mediation, but also in the room. The duty to advise your client in relation to a good settlement, the duty to explain to your client the details of any mediated settlement agreement and the implications of breaching that. There's case law in Australia and a number of other, in England, a number of jurisdictions where a party has agreed to something and then afterwards decided they didn't like it and said, right, I'm going to sue my lawyer because actually I could have got a better deal if I'd gone to court, right? So the court has had to look at what are the obligations of the lawyers and then the obligations of parties themselves. So generally, even in a mediation agreement and increasingly in legislation, you'll find obligations on parties to, for example, engage in mediation in good faith, engage in mediation in a genuine way, right? Make a genuine effort to try and resolve their dispute. So you're looking at those sorts of obligations. You're also looking at your right to have your mediated settlement agreement enforced or your right to challenge that mediated settlement agreement if you, for example, think the other party was acting fraudulently or misrepresented certain things in the mediation. You have a right in relation to that agreement to challenge it. Yeah. There are also rights and obligations in relation to confidentiality, in relation to how admissible or not evidence from the mediation might be in a subsequent court proceeding, right, or other arbitral or other proceeding. So it's a very big field.